Hey everybody, Bob Babbitt here. Another episode of Challenged Athletes Live. Our guest this morning, the one and only Mr. Roderick Sewell, the first double above knee amputee to finish the Ironman Triathlon World Championship. How you doing, Rod?
Doing well. How about you, Bob?
I am spectacular. So, for a lot of people who don't know your background, talk a little bit about growing up actually, where were you born and when did you move to San Diego?
So I was born in San Diego. I was born with missing tibias in both of my legs.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom, being a single mother at the time, made the choice to have my legs amputated at 1.5 years. And then I got my first pair of prosthetics when I was 2, but I didn't know anything about disabled sports or being an adaptive athlete. And so I just kind of grew up knowing I was different and not really knowing why. Sorry.
I was going to say, as a little kid walking around and going to school, were kids staring at you? Were kids nice to you? What do you remember about that part of your life?
I remember like first grade, second grade, having this very small select group of friends.
Yeah.
Who, they didn't care. They just wanted to be kids doing whatever. And then there was ones who didn't really understand and struggled to understand. And either they had parents that weren't telling them or explaining it, or they just, went off of their own thinking and kids, when they don't understand something, they'll make it up. They'll figure it out their own. So that's where you get the robot legs. That's where you get the metal man,
So there's a point where your mom, who's working for the government, has to make a tough decision because you need better legs, but her insurance isn't covering any of that. So what did mom decide to do?
So she was making a pretty decent income, and she decided to file for unemployment because that would be the tip that she needed to get the full coverage for my prosthetics.
So she wouldn't have gotten coverage if she kept her job?
No, they said she was making too much to actually get that coverage, and to pay off those legs at the time, even for microprocessor needs or anything like that, it was still about $30,000 for a leg. So.
Wow. So you guys moved into St. Vincent de Paul Center, which is a homeless center in San Diego. That had to be a little bit of a shock to the system. Your mom was making a good income. You guys had a nice place to live. And now you're living at this homeless shelter. What were you thinking?
It was very night and day, and everything happened very quick. It was, my mom and I were still pretty good about getting to those CAF events when we could. But then we had to go back to the shelter, and St. Vincent was the hotel of shelters,
Yes.
as opposed to as opposed to some of the other ones we were at that were like very, very sketchy. Having her by my side and explaining the whole process and as we were going through it, because we went from having a house to apartments and then being in the shelters. And so she just kind of told me every time to hold steady, we're going to get through this, but this is where we have to be for the time being.
What was the lowest point for you?
The lowest point that I remember the most, I remember we stayed in this one shelter and we got there late. And if you get there at a certain hour, they're not going to let you in. I remember being there for a few hours outside, my mom talking to the people running the shelter, letting them know that we really have nowhere to go. And it was just a situation where it was very like cringing. You don't have a lot of options. You have cots that are well used, and you have to get up early to get in the showers for everybody else. And then you have to get out by a certain time because they use the facility for other things throughout the day. So we're up at 4:30, out the door by 5:30 every morning. And that's probably when it was the worst, I think.
Yeah. When did you connect with Challenged Athletes Foundation and meet your kindred spirit, Mr. Rudy Garcia-Colson, who is also a double above knee amputee, someone you could finally someone in your life you could relate to?
Seeing Rudy the first time, he was 11, I think, and I was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And it was just a shock. It was very much a shock at first because I had seen what everybody else was seeing. When I saw him, I was like, oh, now I get it. I understand why people are scared.
This is different.
Yes, this is very different. And it was cool to see and naturally have that companionship and that difference,
So, and Challenged Athletes Foundation, when did we come into your life? About the same time when you're 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you came out to San Diego Triathlon Challenge, now when people come out, there's 100 kids out there. But back then, it was you and Rudy, right? It didn't take a long time to get the group together for the kids' photo. It was you and
Right.
Rudy. That was basically it. Being out there and seeing other challenged athletes, how did that affect you?
You know, it never gets, you always want more. You know, the more kids we bring in, the more we want to go out there, reach out and bring more kids in and get them more involved. But seeing them and seeing their impact together, and then seeing the way they look at Rudy or myself, it's pretty remarkable.
So at the time, Rudy was obviously moving on his way to becoming a Paralympic swimmer. He was 11, 12 years old. By 16, he was a Paralympic swimmer. You were petrified of the water. I remember you being at La Jolla Cove with your arms wrapped around Rudy's neck, him swimming you around, and you basically screaming the entire time. Was Rudy the motivation for you to learn how to swim and follow that path?
Rudy's always been that guy to find a way. He's never the type to settle or let it just be as it is. He's always been the type to figure it out. And seeing him learn how to swim with me on his back and him also not having legs, he's pretty, he'll figure it out. He'll find a way. And he's always been that way, whether it was skateboarding, swimming, anything. You know, he's always been that guy to buckle down and figure out what the solution is. And seeing him and how he is with that triggered something in me.
Yeah.
And it kind of let me know that I can do it. Any limitations I'm putting on myself is from myself, you know.
At the same time, Alan Voisard enters your life, Al and Allison, and you go from being a total non-swimmer to becoming a Paralympic hopeful. And obviously, Alan saw something in you probably before you did.
Yeah.
When did you start feeling that, you know what, I can actually be pretty good at this?
You know, so before we moved to Alabama, I was 12 years old, and I remember doing my first swim meet, and it was fun. I was hooked. And I think those years of not being able to swim and just naturally falling into it, doing it over and over and just having that joy, is what built into something. And Alan was like, oh, he could possibly go somewhere with this. And I think just being exposed to it and getting that opportunity was what I needed.
When you move back to Alabama, and we have a great school system here in San Diego, you move back to Alabama, you're in a high school where 60% of the kids don't go on to college, if not more. And Alan and Allison basically anteed up to put you in private school to make sure that you got that education. And how many people in your family had gone to college before you did?
We had 0, actually. We had, between my mom and I and my dad, I was the first one to go to college. And then now I have 6 sisters. I'm seeing them graduate. My one sister just got her master's, so she's making me look bad now. It's pretty cool. And seeing the trend in the family is setting those standards is pretty nice.
That is very cool. So you're focused on swimming. You go to the Paralympic trials in 2016, which was really cool in Charlotte, seeing you there and Rudy there and David Gelfand and Haven Shepard and Cody McCaslin, seeing all of our CAF family, all these kids who grew up following Rudy and you are all pursuing their dreams. As really one of the elder statesmen of our kids, what does it mean to you when you see our kids going out and achieving greatness?
I never knew. I knew they all had something in them.
Yeah.
I never knew what it was, you know? So seeing now that they're all doing so well in their own field and seeing the spark that they have on kids behind them is like, it's pretty amazing, because you never know the reaction you're going to have or what you're doing, how that's going to make somebody else feel. And to see the response from them and the domino effect it has on the up and coming kids is pretty cool.
Pretty cool. So last March, you did San Diego, or April, you did the Oceanside 70.3. You did the swim, 1.2 mile swim, and you did 13.1 mile run. Watched you run a 140, 139 half marathon, and I'm like, ooh, swim, run. Rudy went and tried to do the Ironman in 09, missed the cutoff time in Kona. 6 weeks later, went down to Arizona and went 16:05, 16:06. And you watched that, you know, you were you were his, he was the role model. And then all of a sudden you get this opportunity to go to Kona and talk about full circle. So here's this guy who's been your mentor, right? And he's going to be your support guy in Kona as you go and try to become the first double above knee amputee to finish the Ironman World Championship. That journey, and it happened so fast. Really, you didn't get into the end of August. The race is October. I think you've done one triathlon, one total of a swim, bike, run.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that how quickly it happened, and also just the journey to Kona.
It's a crazy journey. Just to rewind a little bit, when Rudy became the first amputee to double above knee amputee to finish, I remember I think I was 17, 21. And I was just getting out of high school or finishing up high school, and I was just in awe, you know, like I couldn't believe it. I was walking around with my chest out like I did it. You know? I did down the line. So, but I remember after Kona, how down he was and how upset he was. And, you know, in my mind, I'm like, this is Rudy the Paralympian, and he's really upset about this. Yeah. And they still came back 6 weeks and did it. But once I got the opportunity, I realized, like, holy crap, this is like a big deal. This is a very big deal. And I took heed to you and what Rudy said, and I knew I had to buckle down.
Yeah.
And really focus on training. Luckily, before Oceanside, I had to swim. I had been running more, and that half marathon hurt, but it was a shock to you, me, Rudy. I remember he looked at me. He thought I was lying when I told him I went hour 39. He was like, "Yeah, whatever," you know. but it was a shock, and it was, I think, the motivation needed to be like, okay, I can do this. Yeah, I do have it in me.
So, and the one thing that I kept getting on you was, listen, the wind out here in Kona is brutal, right? Yep. And I remember you kept saying, you have no idea. Central Park, it gets really windy here in New York, right? And so when you got there, and we went out the week before, and you got on the hand cycle, went out to Javi, and what were you thinking after, because there wasn't a lot of wind that day?
No.
The week before.
I was so confused because it was not easy, but it was zero wind, and it was to the point where I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I have this in the bag. And then race day comes, and oh my God, everything turned from this rolling hill to just straight uphill the entire time.
The 25-mile-an-hour wind. I remember there was a point, didn't you go like an hour looking at your food, and you couldn't take your hands off the cranks because you knew if you did, you'd blow over, but you were looking at the food and couldn't grab it?
Going up Pavi, like, I knew if I moved my hand, because I definitely need both my hands for my pedal, if I took my hand off, I was either going to stop or it was going to be hard to get back going. And yeah, I was like, okay, you got to wait till you have a downhill. And the only time I had a downhill was the turnaround. So, yeah. But at that time, I had my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so I was happy.
Good. And everybody who was watching, and you knew that the Challenge Athlete family all over the world was watching, and you knew what happened when Rudy didn't make it. So I'm guessing in the back of your head, you're thinking, FINISH, finish this bike ride, and that's all that matters. I know I can crawl the run if I have to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I kept in my mind. And the one thing Rudy said to me to help it click was during the bike, he said that we wouldn't be here unless you couldn't finish. Right. We would not just be here for show. We know you can do this, so go out there and do it. And so when I'm going up Pavi, throwing up, sick, freaking, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to keep going until I can't go,
Get off the bike, make the bike cut off time. You're clicking off like 8.5, 9-minute miles. You're flying early on. At some point, the wheels come off, and you've got like some 16-minute miles in there. Were there doubts? Did you have doubts when you're out there? It's pitch black out at the Natural Energy Lab, and all you got is a light stick and a dream. What was going through your head?
I was more so thinking, because I didn't have any doubts until mile 20 hit, and it was just straight, just like everything you have is gone. You're walking regardless if you want to or not. I thought at that time that there might be a chance I don't make it. The whole day, there's so many variables that there can be something that goes wrong that could have nothing to do with your body, just mechanics. and then you're done. So I kept that. I think having that in the back of my mind is what pushed me forward, because I know that anything could stop me, but I'm not going to stop myself. So I'm just going to continue to keep moving. And like you said, I knew you all were watching. My mom's at the finish line. You,
Yes.
Earl, Rudy's at the finish line. And knowing that, and knowing the buildup this had from even way back in 09 when Rudy tried this,
Yeah.
to now coming out here. And my most memorable part of Kona was running on the course, the Queen K.
Yeah.
Because Rudy was with me. I don't know if you remember, he put his running legs on,
Oh, yeah.
and he came and met me. I don't know if we're supposed to, but we definitely were running together on the course. And being those kids who were the CAF kids, the kids that were just running around, to now being these men who are setting a standard and
Yes.
being the first double above knee amputees to run on this course is, it's definitely
Yes.
a highlight of my life.
Another highlight, you come down Lee Drive. There's Mom at the finish. There's Rudy at the finish. Jan Frodeno, who won the race 8 hours earlier, is at the finish. What was going through your head when you came across that iconic finish line?
It's interesting. When I saw the finish line, and obviously you see the row of people,
Yeah.
I almost couldn't believe it. I was like, what do you mean? I feel like I should still go. I feel like I should keep going, but I was there. It was finished. What we came to do was done. And that relief, that kind of like, I don't know if you remember, I definitely tripped at the finish line.
Yes, you did.
Because I tripped up at the finish line because I was like, thank God. I just had to exhale. And I was like, wait, I'm not done. I still have the cameras. Still have I need to go all the way through the finish line. I almost took out the guy in front of me. Like it could have been bad. But yeah.
What did Mom say to you?
The first thing she said was, she was definitely worried. She's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And my mom, a very, very nice woman, is like, oh my God, you did this. Like, she was so ecstatic. So like, just not enraged, but just like excited, you know, like you did this. And she had no idea before, like she had no idea the conditions. She didn't know the distance. She thought it was another CAF distance triathlon, you know, fun run.
Yeah, or the hundreds of thousands of people that are watching online, and the thousands are there lined the finish line. The scope of the event, unless you're there, you don't get it.
And I didn't get it. I had no idea.
You're right. I know you had no idea.
I had no idea.
So we've got our short questions for you.
All right.
And if anybody out there has questions, don't hesitate to send those in. Roderick will get to those. So, best CAF memory.
Best CAF memory. That's a tough one. Oh my gosh, that is a really tough one. I will say the one person that's most memorable, and that I wish I could talk to after all this with Kona. You have a poster from behind you, Jim McLaren, and there's a picture of me, him, I think you, Rudy, Emmanuel.
Yep.
And I just wish I could talk to him. Like, did you ever think I would do this? Because you saw me when I was this little round kid, this kid just hanging out. You know, did you ever think that this would be me? And I wish I could hear what he said.
Go-to comfort food.
I've been eating a lot of chocolate chip cookies. I'm not gonna lie.
Most recent TV show binge.
The OA on Netflix, which has actually been pretty good.
Ah.
Yeah.
Favorite book or podcast?
I have two. My favorite book that I'm reading right now is The Rise of Superman, which they talk about. I don't know if you've heard about that. They talk about triathletes in there as well. And obviously my favorite podcast is Babbittville.
Of course it is. Yes.
Obviously.
So the person you miss seeing the most?
My niece back in San Diego.
Place you can't wait to visit when this is over?
I had a trip to Colorado Springs, and you know, I was there, I was training. I had a weekend trip to the hot springs in Glenwood, and it got canceled with the COVID situation. So when all this is over, I'm trying to get
going back. What words do you love hearing from a coach?
Well done.
And what words do you hate hearing from a coach?
You suck. You're not special.
So we've got a lot of our challenge athletes all over the world who are, stuck inside, and a lot of our identity for all of us is us as athletes, and sometimes we can't get out. Now we can't get out. What's your message to our CAF kids who are out there right now?
I think having this time to ourselves can be a benefit, a positive. I'm very big on meditation. I'm very big on training the mind before you train the body. I think with this time indoors to ourselves, every person's different. So you should find that individual drive. You know, for somebody who's been in a situation like us, where we have this disability, we more so are used to the struggles,
Yes.
right? And so we already have this mindset of what to do or how to do it to get through it. Like for me, I told you I'm reading. You have the occasional binge, the podcast, the stretching, the working out, but what are you mentally doing for yourself to keep yourself sane? And I think that really is an inward thing more than an outward thing.
The other quickie is you were hoping to do some hand cycling and potentially go for 2020. With the Paralympics being moved back a year, that's actually a good thing for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So we could see you at the Paralympics in Tokyo hand cycling.
Very much. There's a chance I would do it for cycling. With this extra year pushback, I'm wondering if training for that 100 breaststroke is still the way to go as well. Because I would only have a cycling race and one swim race, or 2 cycling races.
You go for both.
Why not, right? Like I love
Exactly.
swimming. I love swimming. I that's the one thing I miss the most. I miss swimming during all this.
Roderick, I really appreciate you taking time. You're such a gift to the Challenge Athlete Foundation family, and just love your smile, love everything you bring to our world. Thanks, buddy, for taking so much time.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
All right. Roderick Sewell has been our guest, everybody. Check us out again. Thanks, everybody.